Part 46. Man at the Top of the Food Chain. Author, Xionglang Guo. Chapter 451. Just as William's plane broke through the clouds, a communication request appeared on the screen in the cockpit. Ah Fu's voice rang at the same time. "Master, this is Yang Dali's communication request. Disconnect and ignore this idiot." Unexpectedly, William had just finished saying this, and the entire screen flashed. A man with a shaved head, a gold necklace, and all kinds of expensive rings on his 10 fingers appeared in front of William, occupying the entire screen. Ha 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 ha. After a series of arrogant, idiotic, and embarrassing laughter, Yang Dali said excitedly, "William, your computer is too hacky. You are no match for me compared to hacker technology, ha 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 ha." After Yang Dali said this, he snapped his fingers. One of the two maids on the side handed over the cigar, and the other lit a large handful of banknotes, and used the burning banknotes to light a cigar for Yang Dali. As if he was used to William's silence, Yang Dali then shouted, "William, have you seen the new VC wealth ranking list? Ha 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 ha, this time I am still the first, and you are the second. I came here specially today. I am informing you just to let you know that if you have more money, you will only be below me for the rest of your life." William didn't seem to be angry, he just frowned and said, "The VC Fortune ranking office should have been destroyed in the Battle of Manhattan. This year they actually have the intention to create this ranking." "Ha ha ha ha," Yang Dali said with a proud smile, "because I have acquired their entire company and parent company, and now they are all working in Chiguo. But don't think that I will cheat because I am the boss. I have more money than you, the last 9 add up to more." William rolled his eyes and seemed too lazy to pay attention to the other party. Ha 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 ha. After another series of wild laughter, Yang Dali suddenly screamed and shouted, "No, I made tens of millions more from talking to you. I have to spend it quickly. Lose." After that, he was about to end his communication with William. William had to rub his forehead and said helplessly, "Yang Dali, did you come to contact me specifically just to tell me that you have more money than me?" "Of course, otherwise." "Are you not convinced?" Yang Dali showed an excited smile. "If you are not convinced, let's compete. It's better than burning money. 10,000 cards per minute, see who can burn longer. Right here hour." It seemed that someone next to Yang Dali scolded him a few times, then he patted his forehead and said, "Oh, I forgot. I came to contact you because I have something to ask you. The Red Alliance wants to ask me something." William looked at Yang Dali as if he were looking at a ball of air. "If you are asking me about Manhattan and the sudden large-scale earthquake in the northern part of the United States, then I can only tell you with regret, I don't know the reason." Yang Dali said, "Then do you know that just after the large-scale earthquake occurred in your place, more than 30 places around the world experienced earthquakes, tsunamis, volcanic eruptions, tornadoes, and other disasters one after another? Although their times were very close, but there is still a sequence. The path of these disasters begins in the northern United States, passed through the entire North America, then the Arctic, Europe, and Africa. Then it crossed to West Asia, Southeast Asia, and finally disappeared in Antarctica." There was a pause. Yang Dali seemed to be listening to the people next to him, then nodded, and then repeated, "We suspect that a new powerful monster has appeared. If he is the cause of these natural disasters, then his strength has been far away beyond our imagination. Facing this monster may require us all to unite." William frowned. "I will verify the situation you mentioned and report it to the League of Legends. If necessary, we will contact you again the next moment," he shouted. "Afu, cut off connect." Then the entire screen flashed again, and Yang Dali's figure completely disappeared. The fighter plane piloted by William sprayed out a long red tail flame and flew towards the location of the big earthquake. Chiguo, Beeping City. As the center of the entire Red Kingdom with a population of more than 1 billion, Beeping City also suffered a huge blow when faced with the demon's attack. But with the intervention of several powerful people, it was finally defended. But even so, a large number of buildings in Beeping City have been turned into ruins, and planes and even tanks roar past from time to time. In a conference room, the four founders of the Red Alliance were discussing the abnormal situation that had just appeared on the entire planet. The so-called Red Alliance is an organization initiated by four powerful people to fight against the devil and protect the people. After just a few months of development, the power of the entire Red Alliance has spread to every corner, completely eclipsing the remaining government of the Red Country. However, in the face of the demon craze currently sweeping the world, as well as the boundless sea of humans and monsters, Chi Country is simply the country with the largest number of demon attacks due to its huge population, and it is also the country with the largest number of humans and monsters in the world. Therefore, the Red Alliance can only ensure that the four cities of Peeping, Shanghai, Guangzhou, and Chongqing are used as strongholds to radiate to the surrounding areas to tightly guard these four places. As for other cities, they can only leave it to fate. When William cut off his communication, Yang Dali patted the table in the conference room and said displeased, "This kid dares to cut off my communication. Okay, the information has been brought to us. William will contact us after he confirms that the situation is true." Beside Yang Dali, a handsome man wearing a Taoist robe and with long hair said, "If the natural disaster this time is really caused by those monsters, then our Red Alliance must unite with those guys in the United States." The person who spoke was called Ye Feng. Speaking of his story, it is another legend. In his previous life, Ye Feng was a free and easy immortal who had practiced in the Nine Heavens immortal realm for thousands of years. Who knew that when he broke through the immortal monarch to become an immortal king and accepted the 9-day thunder tribulation, he was plotted against by his enemies and died. However, before he died, with the help of his life treasure Chaos Pearl, he was reborn and became the idiot third young master of the Ye family on Earth. From then on, models, queens, and Lolita were all needed. Filming movies, opening companies, and playing online games were all easy. Let's see how the immortal King Ye Feng, with his invincible immortal skills, can dominate the city. Originally, things should have developed as above, but Ye Feng had just cultivated to the Golden Core realm with the help of his fiancée's Virgin Yin, and the demon crisis broke out. Seeing the government army retreating step by step under the demon's offensive, Ye Feng made a decisive decision and united 3 other powerful people to form the Red Alliance, and absorbed many members, becoming the current behind-the-scenes ruler of the Red Country. Hearing what Ye Feng said, Yang Dali muttered a few words and stopped complaining. Although he was the rich man of the entire Red Alliance and provided all the funds for the development of the Red Alliance, facing Ye Feng, thinking of the other party's powerful strength and cruel means, he did not dare to disobey. After Ye Feng finished speaking, a teenager sitting opposite him also spoke, "Americans are not trustworthy, and William, the fake foreigner, is not a good thing either. They should be destroyed sooner or later." Ye Feng shook his head, "The most important thing at the moment is to clean up those monsters first. It is also necessary to unite the forces of the United States, especially their League of Legends, which can confront us head-on. It just so happens that William is originally a Red countryman, and can serve as a bridge for our communication. If it were someone else, Ye Feng would not have to explain at all, but the young man sitting opposite him made the immortal King Ye Feng have to treat him with caution. This young man is another of the 4 giants of the Red Alliance, the Saint Warrior Qin Ning. Speaking of Qin Ning's experience, it is another epic legend. Qin Ning, who dropped out of high school, aspired to become a professional player in order to make Lan Yike, who broke off the engagement with him, regret it. He played an online game that influenced the world economy, and rose against the dragon. Just as the holy warrior character he was operating flashed with golden light and became the first player to obtain the artifact in Nilong Shengtian, the computer in the internet cafe crashed and his character disappeared. Qin Ning, who was disheartened, went to the rooftop, but found that the holy warrior in the online game actually appeared in reality and was completely under his control, and all the creatures in the world became his leveling targets. What? You said you are rich, watch me explode you into gold coins. What? You said your father has a lot of hands and eyes, watch me explode you into gold coins. What? You said you are a beautiful woman, beautiful as a flower, very good, from today on, except for me, all men who approach you will become gold coins. In the conference room, hearing Yefeng's words, the holy warrior Qin Ning nodded, I know, wait until those monsters are eliminated before dealing with the British Alliance, then kill their whole family, rob their women, and confiscate their property. At this moment, the alarm in the conference room sounded again. At this moment, the alarm in the conference room sounded again. To be continued, please search Ocean Literature. The novels are better and updated faster. Man at the Top of the Food Chain. Author, Xionglang Guo. Chapter 452. Chiguo, along the coast of the South China Sea. The originally beautiful beach now looked like a battered girl. Large areas of submerged beach, buildings, and roads all showed that a serious disaster had just occurred here. After receiving the alert, the Red Alliance immediately sent 2 members here. One was a strong man wearing a Kevlar assault suit, carrying a bunch of bullets and a long gun on his back. He got out of the jeep, stepped on the sand under his feet with his military boots, and looked at what had become a field in front of him. In the vast world, he said with some lingering fear, who did it? Are the tsunami and typhoon really caused by those monsters? Next to him was a huge tiger more than 3 meters long. The tiger's tail whipped in the air, making crackling sounds from time to time. The tiger's mouth opened, and he actually spoke human language. It has nothing to do with us anymore. Anyway, we can only deal with some small monsters. Monsters that can cause such changes in the sky are not something we can handle. I know. The sturdy soldier took out his binoculars and scanned the sea level, and found many corpses of human monsters floating in the sea, but since the higher UPS gave the order, let's come over and take a look. Anyway, if we see, we will run away from level 3 monsters. After months of resistance, the humans on this planet have some clear classifications of the demon's strength. Ordinary monsters are first-level monsters, while elite monsters are second-level monsters. Those whose appearance is strange and different from humans are all collectively called level 3 monsters. Each level 3 monster is extremely powerful and can crush the army head-on. But it seems that these monsters are also fighting among themselves. This tsunami and storm killed many monsters. Just as the strong man finished saying this, he suddenly heard a series of low roars from the tiger beside him. He put down the telescope and saw a young man in white appearing on the sea without knowing when. He was 2 meters above the water, floating quietly in mid-air. From time to time, blue electric sparks sputtered out from the body, shining and flying in the air. The tiger on the side arched his entire back, his hair stood on end, and said nervously, "This guy is so dangerous, and his murderous intent is so strong. Say hello first." The strong man on the side also became serious in his eyes. He first unhooked the long gun on his back, turned on the safety, and then shouted to Li Anping on the water, "Friend, are you also from the Red Alliance? I am the king of soldiers, Chen Luo." After speaking, he pointed to the tiger beside him. "He is the reborn tiger Lei Yun." Li Anping just glanced at them, and the other person's memory was completely displayed in front of him. Chen Luo is the most powerful war machine in the legend. The feared king of soldiers in the dark world. But an accident forced him to retire sadly. Living in seclusion in Huaju, he originally just wanted to live a peaceful life away from the smoke and blood. However, a commission from his comrades forced him to protect a wealthy and unruly daughter. From then on, hot police beauties, beautiful celebrities, cool teachers, and blonde spies came one after another, and Chen Luo had to embark on a glamorous and exciting adventure in Huaju. What the hell? Li Anping's eyes widened and he gave Chen Luo a strange look. The king of soldiers and the rebirth tiger on the other side were just glanced at, and they felt that their blood seemed to have stopped beating, and every breath seemed to have countless blades tearing at their lungs. Just when they feel like they're going to collapse. Although these two guys are a little strange, they are not evil people. Li Anping withdrew his eyes, and his voice sounded softly in their ears, "Keep your people away from us." The next moment, the entire sea level rose. A loud noise like the collapse of heaven and earth reached the ears of one man and one tiger, followed by a shockwave that blew the two of them several kilometers away. The king of soldiers and the reborn tiger had no time to react. They only felt that their vision went dark and they were completely unconscious. When the Red Alliance rescue team arrived, they could only find one person and one tiger who had suffered extensive fractures all over their bodies, suffered cardiopulmonary failure, and fell into a coma. As for the place where they originally stood, it has completely turned into a mirror-like sea surface. Northern United States, Minnesota. A small fighter jet streaked through the vast woods, then stopped in mid-air. Through the flames sprayed from the bottom of the plane, it slowly reduced its speed and drifted forward a little bit. William on the plane looked solemnly at the barren land, with the woods behind him as the dividing line. The land in front of him seemed to have been hit by an asteroid. The trees were either buried by earth and rocks, or were directly blown away. Fly, tear. There are also countless huge cracks in the ground that can't be seen to the end, standing at William's feet as if they lead to the underground world. Although William had seen countless similar scenes in the three northern states on this day, he could not help but be surprised as to what could cause such huge damage. A few minutes later, William hovered the fighter jet in mid-air. Wearing metal armor, he jumped out of the cockpit of the aircraft and fell to the ground. Under his feet was a huge fist mark 3 to 4 meters deep, as large as a human being. Seeing his entire body fall into this crater-like fist mark, William had an incredible expression on his face. What the hell is going on? Just then, a deep voice sounded from behind William. It seems that some terrifying monsters have appeared. Who? William turned around and saw a man wearing a cape, a mask, and wrapped in black armor slowly walking out of the shadows. The man said in an extremely low voice, "Should I call you Metal Man? Or William Xiao?" "Night Eagle," William asked, "when did you come here?" At the same time, he remembered the other party's information in his mind. Night Eagle, or Victor, was originally an invisible rich man in Kansas. But a year ago, he suddenly fell seriously ill and was in a coma for 3 days and 3 nights. As a result, after waking up from a sleep, Victor seemed to have changed into a different person. Not only did he make several miraculous investments in the next year, increasing his assets by dozens of times. And in William's information, the other party secretly unified the entire Kansas underground world. He has amazing close combat ability, is proficient in martial arts and fighting skills from various countries, and his strength and speed have reached an almost inhuman level. It is simply a humanoid Tyrannosaurus Rex, and even has a record of killing a level 3 monster by himself. Standing in front of such a destructive machine, even the latest developed armor on his body cannot make William feel safe. In addition to the amazing combat skills and financial talents, what surprised William the most was that the other party had hoarded a large amount of supplies before the monster appeared, as if they had known that this disaster would happen. Like Superman and him, Victor also became a member of the Hexagon, and wore the equipment developed by himself, and was called Night Eagle by the world. He is a member of the American League of Heroes. Nighthawk didn't seem to expect that William would think of so many things in one sentence. He just faced the other party's question with his usual cold tone. "I arrived a few minutes earlier than you." He pointed to the huge fist mark that caused the terrain change beside him and said, "What do you think?" William felt that the other party's words were a little nervous. After thinking for a while, he said, "Theoretically, there is no creature on the earth that can cause such a degree of damage. Even among those monsters, there has never been an existence that caused such a large-scale earthquake. But I think the person who took action this time may be helping us. Why do you think so? On the way here, I asked Afu to check the information on the internet. Just after the earthquake here, various natural disasters occurred on a large scale around the world, and the monsters died the most in these natural disasters. So I suspect that it was a human like us who used a weapon beyond modern technology to attack those monsters. Just then, Nighthawk pressed his ears, as if he was conducting some kind of remote communication. After a moment, he said to William in front of him, "It seems that your speculation is wrong." What? Just then, there was a tremor in the ground, and when William looked up, Nighthawk had disappeared from his sight. At the same time, Alpha's electronic voice came from the communicator in the armor, "Master, Los Angeles has been attacked by unknown humanoid creatures. 2 hours ago, Los Angeles, USA. As the base camp of American Superman, Jack, the material living conditions here are much worse than before the end of the world, but compared with the disaster areas in other parts of the world, it is already a paradise. Every day, there are always long lines of refugees waiting to enter the city at several checkpoints in Los Angeles. The 310-meter-high Federal Bank building, as the tallest building in Los Angeles and even in the entire California, was not destroyed in the war with the devil because of Jack's protection. Now, this skyscraper overlooking the scenery of Los Angeles has naturally become Jack's palace. Jack, who returned to Los Angeles on a private plane last night, was lying on the top floor of the Federal Bank building, on a huge soft bed, with floor-to-ceiling glass just a few meters in front of him, and he could clearly overlook the scenery of Los Angeles. Pulling his body out from the surrounding pink breasts, and one of the blonde girls hugged her with a drunken look on her face. Seeing that girl's face was confused, it seemed that she had not yet woken up from the madness of last night. Jack took a handful of granular pills from the bedside and stuffed them into her mouth, then pushed her back to the bed. Seeing the other party's twisted limbs and a silly smile on her face, he smiled maliciously, and then took a handful of pills and stuffed them into his mouth. Compared with the harm of ordinary humans taking drugs, Jack now has no side effects from taking drugs with his superhuman immunity, but the pleasure he gets is not as strong as that of ordinary people. Just as he was looking at the girls lying on the bed, thinking about whether to do some early exercise, a terrifying explosion sounded in the sky, and a silver light flashed, like a thunder across the sky of Los Angeles. Jack rushed over immediately, his eyes fixed on the sky that kept making a piercing sound, and muttered, "What? Fighter?" The next moment, he had jumped off the building and rushed towards the place where the sound exploded. But at the moment he jumped, a gust of wind blew in his face, and the terrible shockwave immediately swept him out and crashed into the Federal Bank building. Even all the glass in the entire building was shattered at this moment, and the steel bars and concrete began to shake, as if it would collapse in the next moment. Jack stood up with his face covered in blood. While his wounds continued to heal, he wanted to run out of the building. According to his experience, if the building shakes to this extent, it will collapse immediately. As for the people inside the building, he was even less likely to waste time saving them. But who knew that he had just taken a few steps when the entire building seemed to flicker? Some unknown method had stopped the shaking and even strengthened the building to prevent it from collapsing. Then Jack saw a man in white floating quietly in the air outside the building. He seemed to have noticed Jack's gaze. He glanced slightly. The look in his eyes was like looking at an ant, which made Jack feel special. Accurate. But the next moment, the other party frowned, and the cold light released from his eyes made his body feel like being pricked by needles, making him unable to move at all. Jack could only watch helplessly as the other person's fingers moved inch by inch, and then pointed towards his position. Jack's body instantly entered an explosive state, and Black's roar resounded in his heart, but he couldn't hear anything. The opponent's speed was so fast that he couldn't do anything at all. He could even see the shadow of the opponent's movements in front of him, which was already his limit, and then he felt a destructive force coming out of his body. The whole process, whether it was the other party's eyes or movements, was as casual as squeezing an ant to death, stabbing Jack's inner self-esteem to blood. Before he lost consciousness, he could only feel that there seemed to be some black shadow that knocked away the man in white, causing the man in white to move his finger slightly. The next second, Jack completely lost consciousness. Jack! Jack, wake up! In a daze, Jack opened his eyes. At this time, most of his body had disappeared, and even only half of his brain was left. He only felt the heartbreaking pain spreading to his brain. The regenerative energy in the body has also been consumed. A strong man named Mark was putting the wound on his wrist to his mouth and letting him suck his blood. He is Jack's most loyal subordinate and Jack's only friend in high school. Seeing Jack open his eyes, Mark said excitedly, "Jack, are you awake?" But his excited expression didn't last for even a second before it completely solidified. Jack ripped out his heart and stuffed it into his mouth. He looked up and looked around. The original building and the blocks surrounding the building had turned into a huge crater. There were hundreds of injured men gathered around him, looking at him while eating with fear on their faces. Hayes' voice sounded in his ears, "We have been dead for almost 10 minutes. I have to say that I originally despised your behavior of telling people close to you about your abilities, but now it seems that human beings are better than I thought. It's even more stupid, but it will prepare some spare rations for us." Jack said angrily, "What's going on? Who is that man? Am I not supposed to be the strongest person on this planet?" "That's because you haven't grown enough." Hayes' voice was full of temptation. "As long as you reach the 4th energy level, you can be as powerful as the guy in white, or even stronger than him. Do you want revenge? That's it? Let's eat all these people. Anyway, we can blame them all on the guys who just attacked us." Thinking of the look in the white-clothed man's eyes, the way he looked at him like an ant or an insect, Jack roared with rage and rushed towards the crowd, causing a bloody storm. To be continued. Please search PI Ocean Literature. The novels will be better and updated faster. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Man at the top of the food chain. Author, Seong Lang-go. Chapter 453. In outer space, hundreds of thousands of kilometers above the horizon, Li Enping, dressed in white, stood quietly in a corner, like a statue that remained unchanged through the ages. Nothing could leave a trace on his body. Opposite him, more than 10 kilometers away from him, was an evil god clan warrior covered in grey cuticles, with 2 large sharp horns on his head, and a thick tail lashing behind him. It was the 8th level warrior of the evil god clan sent by the evil god clan to investigate the incident of Seagram losing contact. At this time, the space where Li Enping and the soldier were located was like 2 halves of the same world. On Li Enping's side, everything was so calm, as if the space was frozen, motionless, maintaining the vacuum of the universe. On the side of the evil god clan warrior, the originally thin particles seemed to have gathered together and turned into a solid, like a transparent crystal, enveloping him and the space around him. At the junction of the 2 spaces, matter seems to be constantly changing between its original state and the solid state. Scenes of fighting with the opponent appeared in Li Enping's mind. From the first time he tracked the opponent's aura, after a moment of fighting on the North Rice continent, he pursued the opponent all the way. In a short period of time, he spread the entire battlefield to the world, but he was still unable to completely kill the opponent. According to Seagram's memory, all members of the evil god clan can reach the 6th energy level as long as they live long enough. For them, level 0 to level 6 are all the same level, representing civilians. The 7th energy level represents awakening, which is equivalent to the 0 level of human beings, while the 8th energy level is the real ability user for them. This is a terrible race. See Graham's Wrath thought Chi, their physical structure and quality are just their basic attributes. Only when they reach the 8th energy level will they awaken different abilities, just like human beings have truly become a group of people with thought Chi. The same as those with super abilities. Last time Li Enping asked Chaos Tide what the Red River King's abilities were. That's why. He wanted to know the awakening power of the Red River King. However, Chaos Tide only lightly brushed this off and did not tell Li Enping. Based on current performance, this guy can convert himself and all the substances around him into gaseous state 3 states, solid and liquid. But at most this only limits many of my attack methods. The most troublesome thing is the immortality ability similar to reincarnation. This was the reason that led Li Enping to chase the opponent for most of the planet. Just then, the warrior from the evil god tribe spoke. He licked his lips and showed a hint of a smile. Interesting, you can actually kill me 34 times. It seems that you are not a native of this planet. Otherwise, how could that guy from hitting C survive? Now, hearing the other party speak, Li Enping also planned to test it, but naturally he could not tell the other party his true origin, so he said, "This is indeed not my home planet. So I was thinking, if all life on the entire planet is killed, death, can you be resurrected?" "Oh, we fought all the way just now, and you took the initiative to reduce the damage and the aftermath of the attack." The soldier smiled. "I don't believe that people like you will kill people on a planet, but even if it is true, if you destroy this planet, I might become even more difficult to deal with." Obviously both of them are testing each other. Li Enping is not willing to easily wipe out the entire planet of humanity in one attempt and wants to find the reason for the opponent's immortality. The warriors of the evil god clan are trying to find the reason for the opponent's spirituality when they are suppressed by the opponent in terms of strength, flaws and capabilities. "By the way, I've warmed up a little bit, but I don't know your name yet." "My name is Rex Nose. What's your name, strange warrior?" Li Enping glanced at him, and thinking of the other party's previous actions, he suddenly said lightly, "Just now, I seem to smell something black down there." The other party's expression did not seem to change at all, but the subtle fluctuations in his eyes could not be hidden from Li Enping's observation. Sure enough, in order to stop me just now, he didn't hesitate to let me break his body into pieces and then reincarnate again. So, the demons who arrived here first did find traces of Hay, but they called Lennox, who arrived temporarily because they were not sure of defeating them. "Since you have discovered it, you must also know about the existence of our clan," Renos said. "Hay's clone, for a strong person like you, it will not be of any quality if you get it. Leap. If you don't like us destroying this planet, I can take people away right away. The only thing I need is that you hand over Hay's clone to me." Li Enping did not answer, but clenched his fist slightly. "I will think about it. As for the time I am thinking about it, you should die first." The next moment, Li Enping punched out, and countless rays of light had completely submerged Renos. Under the hundreds of thousands of light-speed punches per second, Renos's entire body was moving in a way that was visible to the naked eye. The speed slowly slowed down, and finally it turned into a pile of powder and disappeared. Rex knows, I see, after arriving in outer space, he became even more powerful than before. This Li Enping does have a heart to protect the humans on the planet below him. Next time, should I use this feature to attack with all my strength? But it seems that I haven't tested the opponent's strength limit yet. Li Enping, he is still not dead. This place is more than 500,000 kilometers away from the Earth. The space around is almost a vacuum state. There is no escape of the soul. It seems that his ability to reincarnate does not rely on the surrounding medium. It is difficult to say about the distance requirement. Is it the immortal nature of the 8th energy level? The most troublesome thing is that this ability can be activated actively, and ordinary imprisonment methods are useless. and deliberately died in this attack, wanting to drag the battlefield back to the planet, so that I have some concerns and cannot exert my full strength. The two opponents each had different ideas, one drifted away with the wind, and the other turned his head and looked in the direction of the planet. This Rhinos is very accustomed to using his immortal nature to test the opponent again and again. In this case, he still has some extremely lethal tricks that he has not used. Forget it, let's master Hay first. It should be about level 4 now. After thinking for a while, Li Enping had turned into a beam of light and rushed towards the earth. In the square of Los Angeles, Jack tore a middle-aged man in two, feeling the other's soul being absorbed by himself, and then he bit off the flesh on the other's shoulder. Under his feet, in the streets and buildings around him, there were tens of thousands of human corpses. And his body had already been stained with blood. Here it comes. This feeling, Jack looked at his hands excitedly, feeling the power in his body constantly rushing to his limbs. If I had known earlier, I would have killed all these pigs earlier. How could I let that kid be so arrogant? Thinking of the man in white who easily strangled him before, Jack showed a grim smile on his face. When I meet you again, I will eat your meat piece by piece. Just when Jack broke through the fourth energy level, a black figure emerged from his back, and Hay's voice was transmitted directly to Jack's ears through the vibration of the air. Don't worry, Li Enping, that kid, if I meet him in other worlds in the future, I will help you get revenge. Hey, Jack turned his head and saw a black figure appear in front of him, wondering, what's wrong with you? Why can you appear in the real world? Hay ignored him and just grabbed Jack's head. The kid in front of him had a weak will, and it was easier for him to surrender with a physical attack than a mental attack. But just as the black incarnation of mind stretched out his claws, a white light flashed, and Li Enping appeared between the two and grabbed the arm of the incarnation of mind with one hand. Hay looked at Li Enping, who suddenly appeared in surprise, and was wondering why the other party suddenly appeared. There was a bang, and Jack over there actually used the burst state, mixed with a fist of mind energy, and punched Li Enping in the chest. In his eyes, Li Enping was an enemy, so as soon as he found him, he attacked subconsciously. Hay looked at Jack with an idiotic look, while Li Enping retracted his gaze from Hay, turned his head, and looked at Jack, who was slowly retracting his fist. As Li Enping turned his head, Hay's mental energy incarnation screamed, and was pinched into a bead by Li Enping in a few strokes, and thrown into his mouth with one hand like chewing gum. Jack covered his right arm with his left hand, looking stupidly at Li Enping, who was unharmed, and swallowed Hay in one bite. His whole arm was swollen a little bit, because the only effect of a full-strength punch was that his arm was comminuted. At this time, he saw Li Enping's indifferent eyes when he turned his head, as if he saw his father, who had just returned home after the parent-teacher meeting, and inexplicable cold sweat kept oozing out from his back. To be continued, please search Ocean Literature. The novel is better and updated faster. Man at the top of the food chain. Author, Xianglang Go. Chapter 454. Looking at Jack, who was somewhat at a loss, Li Enping said calmly, "Good strength." Such a sentence, compared with Jack's right hand, which has not yet fully healed, is a great irony. Jack looked at Li Enping with a red face, feeling that his heart seemed to be stabbed hard. Anger filled his heart. Since he gained the black ability, he has been smooth sailing all the way. When has he encountered such a situation? No one can look down on me, no one can trample on my dignity. Jack roared wildly, forcibly suppressing the fear in his heart before, and the black energy all over his body burned fiercely. The whole intact left hand swelled up again and punched Li Enping, who was close at hand. A punch was thrown, and the terrifying force tore the air, making a terrible scream. The power of Jack's punch was enough to smash more than 10 tanks. His eyes released a bloodthirsty look, as if he had seen Li Enping being smashed into pieces by his punch. But facing Jack's furious punch, Li Enping just glanced at him indifferently. But just such a simple look was enough to make Jack suffer. With a loud bang, Jack's chest was hit by a siege cone, and he flew backwards at a speed faster than his full speed, leaving a faint white mist in the air. With a series of crackling sounds, Jack crashed through 12 buildings at the first level, and finally fell into a piece of cement and steel. With a look, Jack had almost no good meat on his body. He made a sound of "ah," trying to lift his head and crawl out of the pile of cement ruins. But he found that Li Anping had appeared in front of him again and gently stepped on his head. He couldn't lift his head even if he tried his best. Li Anping was searching for the black information in his body to decide how to deal with Jack in front of him. Jack exerted his strength several times, and he felt that the foot on his head was like a mountain. No, it was like the sky was falling. No matter how hard he tried, let alone raising his head, every muscle in his body was trembling violently, but he couldn't move at all. "Ah," he was shocked and angry and said, "Who are you? Let me out if you dare. 30 years in the east, 30 years in the west. Don't bully the poor young man. If you have the ability, let me go this time, and we will compete again next time. Do you dare? Are you afraid of my potential, afraid that I will surpass you in the future, so you want to strangle me now? Shut up." In the face of his provocation, Li Anping just added a little more strength and stepped his head into the soil. As a result, Jack opened his mouth and was stuffed with a large mouthful of soil. His mouth could only make a humming sound and kept struggling. On the other side, Li Anping's consciousness had sunk into the black sphere in his stomach. That was the black clone. The consciousness of the two people also began to communicate. "Hey, you can still recognize me. It seems that all your consciousness is connected. But I didn't expect that you chose such a person to possess this time. Hey, you have grown faster than I thought, but it's not that there haven't been geniuses like you in the multiverse who have escaped my control." His tone was full of malice. "Guess what happened to them in the end? I'm not interested in knowing their ending." Li Anping showed an interesting expression. "I'm interested in your existence." The next moment, Li Anping has begun to scan Hei's structure, Hei's data, and Hei's information just like scanning the memory of ordinary people. But nothing was found. Just like others, mental attacks on him were ineffective. When Li Anping began to scan Hei, he felt that the other party was like a wormhole. All the detection methods he released seemed to lead to another universe. Countless information flowed in it, but he could not find the information of Hei himself. Hei laughed. "It's useless, Li Anping. As long as I don't want you to, you will never be able to scan my memory. If you want to know anything, come and talk to me." Talk, Li Anping thought to himself. These demons who have been in the multiverse for countless thousands of years are indeed not easy to deal with. In their hearts, most of the love, hatred, and hatred can be replaced by pure interests, preferences, etc. But the next moment, Li Anping had already sunk part of his consciousness into Hei's body. Just like passing through a thin film, a weird and absurd world appeared in front of Li Anping. It's like all kinds of colors are mixed together, and the world has become a variety of palettes. There are no planets, no suns, and no creatures. Only all kinds of mixed colors make Li Anping's vision blurred, and there are those undead who keep wailing and screaming. No, this world doesn't even have the concept of so-called sound. The so-called scream is a purely spiritual sense. Spiritual universe. Just as Li Anping was thinking this, the world in front of him had turned into a dark place, or pure nothingness, and even the concepts of space and time were quickly deprived. "Li Anping, this is not the place you should come to." Then Li Anping felt that his consciousness was wiped out in an instant and disappeared completely. "So that's it, you have built your mind into a spiritual universe," Li Anping said. "It seems that in that world, no one can kill you. So, if you want to know something, come and talk to me. Otherwise, at most you can just eat one of my clones." He sneered. "Li Anping, we have a lot of places to cooperate, such as several of the 12 demons, but they are all our enemies. Li Anping ignored him. He knew that Hei's affairs and secrets could not be solved in a short time, so he put his attention on Jack under his feet. Now without Hei's blessing, although the opponent's sea of consciousness is still huge, making ordinary mental attacks ineffective, it is not as difficult to observe as Hei's spiritual universe. With Li Anping's current strength and computing power, it took more than 10 seconds to scan all the memories in Jack's mind, as well as the memories of those who were devoured. When Li Anping spoke to Jack again, he was already filled with a chill, and his eyes were full of disgust when he looked at Jack. "You, this guy, are worse than I thought." Even Li Anping couldn't help releasing his murderous intent when he saw those violent scenes in his memory. After the little man who had been bullied by others got the power to oppress others and the guidance of Hei, he completely broke out the darkest part of human nature. Li Anping slightly raised his foot, and then stepped hard on Jack's vest. With a puff, as if something was forcibly squeezed out, Li Anping's foot blew Jack's lungs. Jack's whole body twitched, and the blood on his face surged, and it had turned into a deep red. He wanted to roar and resist, but whether it was the power bound around him or the lungs that were blasted, he had no chance to resist or roar. At this moment, Li Anping's voice came into his ears like the cold wind of Siberia. "You like to eat little girls, don't you?" With a snap, Jack's right arm was torn off and thrown on the ground. "You like to eat alive, don't you?" Bang, 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 the muscle fibers on his thighs, which were like steel bars, were torn off bit by Li Anping. "You like to rape and kill, don't you?" His lower body was crushed into a pulp by a kick, and Jack twisted his body wildly. His eyes bulged and were almost full of bloodshot. Unlike Li Anping, who was used to being hurt in the past, he was not very able to endure pain. At this time, Li Anping's voice was no different from the whisper of the devil in his ears. He wanted to beg for mercy, but he couldn't say anything except the sound of whimpering. "I have also killed people, eaten souls, and even devoured human flesh." Li Anping squatted down, put his hand on the back of Jack's head, and gently stroked it, which made the latter stand up with goosebumps. "In theory, I have no right to teach you a lesson." Jack felt the other party's palm pressing on the back of his head gradually increase in force, and the fear in his heart was constantly magnified. His teeth kept trembling and colliding, making a collision sound. "But I think you've eaten so much human flesh, you should be prepared to be eaten." Pa, puff. Ah. To be continued. Please search Ocean Literature, the novels are better and updated faster. Man at the top of the food chain. Author, Xiong Go. Chapter 455. In the huge conference room in the Hexagon, more than 70% of the members of the League of Legends were present. In addition, there were the Secretary of Defense, the Secretary of Homeland Security, the Director of the Central Intelligence Agency, the Director of the Federal Bureau of Investigation, and other members. Even some people who were unknown to the audience appeared in the meeting. Next to Metal Man William, a young man in a robe smiled and said to him, "William, do you know why so many people came here today? I heard that Jack conquered Manhattan. Why does Pawson look so bad now?" William glanced at the young man and said slowly, "Los Angeles was attacked by unknown humanoid creatures. Jack is dead." At the same time, he remembered the information about the superhero next to him. Lin Dong, an ordinary young man in the 21st century. After breaking up, he climbed Mount Tai and jumped off the cliff. He accidentally got a bronze ring. It turned out that the bronze ring came from another world. The owner of the bronze ring was a lifelong treasure of a magic god. Facing the school beauties, celebrities, rich people, and politicians who flocked to him, Lin Dong said, "I just want to live an ordinary life." When Lin Dong was traveling in the United States, he encountered a demon invasion. In the end, in order to protect his beloved, he had to stand up and finally join the League of Legends. Because he often cast magic through the bronze ring, he was also called the Green Ring Man. When Lin Dong heard William's words, his eyebrows shrugged and he said in surprise, "That bastard is dead. How is it possible? With that guy's vitality, I'm afraid even a nuclear bomb may not be able to kill him." William did not answer, but just nodded at the front of the conference room. Lin Dong turned his head and saw that Bao Sen from the Ministry of Defense had stood up. Started to speak. "Everyone, you are all members of the League of Legends, American superheroes, each of you is a miracle creator, an immortal myth, and a legend of mankind." Bao Sen's face was full of seriousness. Although every superhero sitting down knew that he was just an ordinary person, they were all infected by his serious expression and aura, and listened to the other party's speech seriously. "But today, an unprecedented and terrible opponent has appeared." Pawson gestured. The assistant underground began to play the image on the monitor in the conference room. "Everyone, maybe you already know that Manhattan was recaptured by American Superman, but just 12 hours ago, Los Angeles was attacked by unknown humanoid creatures, and American Superman died." As Pawson explained, a series of portraits began to play on the display screen. First, the Federal Bank building was attacked and turned into ruins, and finally, of course, it was American Superman. Jack's body. When his body appeared in front of everyone in the conference room, almost all the women screamed, and some women even lowered their heads and vomited directly. Other superheroes. Even cold-blooded as Nighthawk and rational as Metal Man, they all couldn't help squinting their eyes or raising their eyebrows. Beside Metal Man William. Lin Dong looked at the image with a pale face, but seeing William looking at the body with an unchanged expression, he also forced himself not to shake his head. But his eyes couldn't help but glance around. He said, "It's all jam. How big a grudge is this? Jack, didn't he kill someone else's mother?" Although Metal Man's eyes were a little surprised, his expression was very calm. He still maintained his usual calmness and said, "Jack has the ability to regenerate super fast, but this regeneration ability is obviously not infinite. Theoretically, if you want to kill him completely, you must continue to injure him and finally let him use up the energy for regeneration." At this point, Metal Man changed his tone and said coldly, "And this regeneration ability becomes a source of pain when facing an enemy that is 10 or 100 times stronger than himself. Judging from the state of the corpse and the difference in the color of the regenerated flesh, the perpetrator is not only a master, but also very proficient in the structure of the human body." He made Jack feel the pain and torture to the maximum extent and with the highest efficiency. Just when Lin Dong felt a chill listening to what Metal Man said, Bao Sen on the stage had already proved what Metal Man said. "As you can see, this is the body of the American Superman." Paulson's eyes seemed to be sprayed with flames. According to the forensic identification, the American Superman was tortured for 40 minutes before his death. Because of his super-fast regeneration ability, his limbs, chest, and head were repeatedly destroyed. The murderer is a person who is very familiar with the human body structure, familiar with interrogation, and skilled in sadism. The people in the audience listened to Paulson's speech. Although they were a little surprised that the American Superman Jack was tortured to death, they all felt that it was too much of a fuss to call them all for such a thing. Some people even knew that Jack liked to eat people and torture civilians, and they were happy about his death. Lin Dong also had a similar view. Jack was very powerful and the American Superman was very famous. His death was indeed a blow to the current morale of the United States. Los Angeles also needed to deal with the aftermath. At that time, I am afraid that there will be a new round of competition. But what does it matter? It's the end of the world now. How many people are dying every day on the entire earth? Famine, demons, internal strife, natural disasters, death is a very normal thing for the human beings of this era, even for Superman of the United States. Really, can't a conference call be enough? Lin Dong touched his queasy stomach. "I have no appetite for dinner." The Metal Man on the side heard what Lin Dong said, but shook his head. Since Baosin invited us here, naturally it won't end so easily. I'm afraid this matter has already had a follow-up. Follow-up, Lin Dong asked, did you find the guy who killed Jack? Maybe Paulson and the others discovered the other party's traces, but... Metal Man William narrowed his eyes, and a trace of solemnity flashed in his eyes. A more troublesome situation is that the other party finds us. Find us? Just when Lin Dong was thinking about what Metal Man meant, Bao Sen on the stage spoke again. At the same time, the picture on the screen changed and a video started to play. Everyone, 6 hours ago, the murderer who claimed to have killed Jack came to the White House. Only the sky above the White House can be seen in the picture. A dark shadow slowly came closer. When the shadow revealed its true appearance, everyone present exclaimed. It's an aircraft carrier. It's the Nimitz. Hell, he lifted the Nimitz to the White House. As the camera zoomed in, an Asian young man with black hair and white clothes appeared in front of the camera. It was he who held the USS Nimitz aircraft carrier high with one arm in his left hand and flew the 100,000-ton aircraft carrier to the White House. Above. Damn, what is he going to do? Lin Dong's eyes bulged as he looked at the picture of Li Anping raising his mother with one arm, with disbelief on his face. Really or not, this can't be a computer special effect. It seemed that he heard what Lin Dong said. Paulson on the stage said coldly, everyone, this is not a movie, let alone an animation. This man not only hijacked the USS Nimitz aircraft carrier, rushed all the members on the ship to the Hawaiian port, but also personally lifted the aircraft carrier into the air, arriving over the White House. As Paulson said, an even more incredible scene appeared on the screen. Li Anping stretched out his other hand and began to squeeze the Nimitz aircraft carrier with his left and right hands at the same time. The hands become as fragile as origami. It was squeezed and deformed in a few clicks. Not only the places where his hands touched, but the entire Nimitz aircraft carrier began to deform under his terrifying power, as if a pair of invisible hands were kneading it, slowly compressing the aircraft carrier. Superheroes in the conference room. The top leaders of the government were all looking at the screen stupidly, as if they were watching a fairy tale. Watching the aircraft carrier being compressed and shrunk in Li Anping's hands, they seemed to be able to hear the harsh sound coming from the metal. Less than a minute. Li Anping then crushed the entire USS Nimitz aircraft carrier into an iron ball the size of a palm. Watching Li Anping swing this pitch-black iron ball around like an ordinary tennis ball with one hand, the conference room was filled with the sound of swallowing saliva. At last, Li Anping slowly flew to the lawn in front of the White House and casually placed the iron ball in his hand on the ground. Under the heavy pressure of the iron ball, the entire ground continued to crack. The iron ball seemed to have created a whirlpool, sinking towards the ground continuously, causing terrifying cracks in the surrounding lawns. The White House is already surrounded by countless soldiers, tanks, and even superheroes. But they just watched Li Anping finish everything quietly, and no one dared to make any unnecessary moves. At the end of the shot, all you can see is that a USB flash drive suddenly appeared in Li Anping's hand. He threw the USB flash drive to a White House official, and his whole body turned into a ray of light and disappeared. It wasn't until the video stopped completely that the sound of gasping could be heard throughout the conference room. No one spoke or moved. Everyone looked at Li Anping's last disappearing figure on the screen with a sad look on his face, silently. After everyone saw this video, they felt ridiculous and frightened, and had no idea what to say. In the silence, Metal Man Williams' voice rang out, "This man, let's call him a man for now, with the power he showed, if he wants to destroy us, I'm afraid a few fists will be enough." But he did not do this. Instead, he carried out a typical military deterrent over the White House. This means that he can communicate and that we have something this man needs. So what is the content of the USB flash drive he left behind? Baosin nodded, "You are right. In that USB flash drive is a message he left. The general content inside tells us that he is an alien from outer space, and his enemies who pursued him came to the Earth. And those monsters that suddenly appeared are creatures called demons, and they are him enemy. The various natural disasters that have occurred around the world in the past few days are the aftermath of his battle with the demon general. In just a few days, just yesterday, he had eliminated more than 90% of the demons on the entire Earth. When everyone heard this, they all became happy, and some even shouted excitedly. No wonder I can't see those monsters these days. Have they all been destroyed? Great, this alien is here to help us. Only Metal Man and Nighthawk Man had no change in their expressions, still listening to Bosun's speech as cold as ice. But he lost the trace of the demon general he had been chasing all the way. He said that the demon general had disguised himself as a human, and we must help find the demon general. If he can't find him within 7 days, then he will take special force. Destroy the entire Earth. In the sky, Li Enping was emitting various fluctuations, and blue electric currents jumped out from time to time and dissipated in the air. He kept using various methods to scan the entire planet, but he never found the other party's trace. Black's voice came out, he, Li Enping, if 7 days are up, will you really destroy this planet? That depends on what I, Reek knows, and the humans on this planet can do within these 7 days. To be continued. Please search for Ocean Literature. The novel is better and updated faster. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Man at the top of the food chain. Author, Xiong Lango. Chapter 456. As everyone looked at Li Enping, the conference room fell into silence. No one spoke. Everyone was waiting quietly for Li Enping's answer, and the atmosphere was as dull as water could seep out. 7 days are indeed mentioned to allow them to gather quickly, but 1 year is also impossible. 1 year is enough time for the Evil God clan and the King of the Red River to discover the situation here. It will not work if it is too short. He thought about his next plan, as well as the Earth, the King of the Red River, and the Tide of Chaos. Finally, Li Enping said, 1 month, and then I can give you 1 month to do this. Seeing that Metal Man and Night Eagle Man were still talking, he waved his hand and said, I will help you do what you said about integrating global forces. By then, all human forces must obey my arrangements. Help me find the devil. Feeling the murderous intent revealed in Li Enping's mouth, no one, including Metal Man and Nighthawk Man, refuted. Paulson, who was standing aside, asked, how do you plan to help us? Li Enping said, on your planet, there are still 26 countries that have maintained their organization despite the attacks of demons, and 32 large cities have become strongholds to resist the demons. I will next unite all countries and cities, and all surviving humans will live in these 32 large strongholds. And your goal is to find traces of the demon disguised as a human in the next time. Next, these superheroes and officials, relying on their influence and power, began notification and integration activities for the entire Earth. Because there are no obstacles from demons and monsters on the Earth, the United States military and superheroes combined now are enough to sweep away most of the forces on the Earth. Except for the Red Alliance far away in the east, it is a powerful force that can fully compete with the United States, and is even slightly stronger than the superheroes. Such troublesome opponents were naturally left to Li Enping to deal with personally. 5 hours later. Early morning in the city of Peeping. The 4 giants of the Red Alliance gathered together again, and what could bring them together like this was just a notice from the United States. After reading the other party's notice, Holy Warrior Qin Ning slapped his palm on the conference table, leaving a huge palm print. Are these Americans impatient? They want us to merge with them and accept the command of an unknown person. Are you kidding me? Yang Dali on the side said, but what about the shock before? Not only Beeping, but Chongqing and Shanghai were also shocked. The alien thing can't be true, right? How could there be such a nonsense and destroy the Earth? Qin Ning said disdainfully. These Americans think we are stupid. They want to take advantage of the large-scale reduction of those monsters to annex us. He turned his head, looked at immortal King Yefeng, and asked, "Boss, what do you think?" "I think we should just bring people to fight. I have long disliked League of Legends. It's good to fight over there." Yang Dali became excited. "I just spent money to build a bunch of Zaku, and I'm worried that I have no place to use them." Hearing the shouts of Yang Dali and Qin Ning, Yefeng frowned and said nothing. As a being who had reached the top level of the world of immortality, he had indeed felt the disappearance of the power of the lunar moon before, that is, the moon was far away. If it was in the previous life, he would naturally not take the so-called alien seriously. But he in this life. Now that he only has the power of the golden elixir, he still lacks confidence when facing an alien who may be able to capture the stars and the moon. And he didn't want to expose his trump card too early, which made him even more conflicted. Hearing the urgings of Yang Dali and Qin Ning, Yefeng looked at the last person in the Red Alliance and asked, "Zhang Ao, what do you think?" That person spent most of every meeting with his eyes closed and concentrating. The boy who could not speak more than 10 sentences in a month was the last giant of the Red Alliance, and the person whom Yefeng could not understand the most. What he didn't know was that the reason why he couldn't see through Zhang Ao was because Zhang Ao didn't belong to this world in the first place. He had traveled through time after being struck by a thunderbolt. Fist continent, rule the roost with strength. People who practice on the mainland are called weightlifters. Weightlifters are divided into 6 realms: strongman, powerful master, powerful master, powerful master, and powerful emperor. When the power of a punch exceeds 100 million kilograms, he can be called the boxing emperor. The genius boy Zhang Ao encountered an accident when he was 5 years old. It was detected that his punching power could never exceed 10 kilograms. He was scorned and looked down upon by the entire family. However, after a thunderstorm, he found that he had become a rare person. Naturally gifted body. See how young Zhang Ao breaks the sky with his fists and becomes a boxing emperor. But it is a pity that before Zhang Ao had time to write his legend, Tianlei later found himself on Earth, in the Red Country. Later, relying on his divine power, he gradually established a foothold in the Red Kingdom. Finally, taking advantage of the craze brought by the devil, he became one of the 4 giants of the Red Alliance and was called the Red Captain. Hearing Yefeng ask what he thought, Zhang Ao thought for a while and said, "Anyone who offends my brothers will be punished no matter how far away they are. If the League of Legends actually wants to devour us, then we must be prepared to be eaten by us." Hearing that Zhang Ao also agreed with their views, Qin Ning and Yang Dali all cheered, waiting for Yefeng's order, and then they led their brothers to fight. At this moment, the whole base suddenly shook, and the next moment a huge force that was difficult to calculate rushed out directly from above the 4 people, blasting a hole with a diameter of more than 500 meters in the entire base. A minute ago, Li Anping had appeared in the sky above Beeping City. According to the information provided by Metal Man William, the location more than 800 meters below him was the headquarters of the Red Alliance. And now the 4 giants of the Red Alliance should be discussing the news sent by the League of Legends. Li Anping's eyes penetrated through the layers of cement, mud, and steel bars, and directly saw Yefeng, Qin Ning, Zhang Ao, and Yang Dali, and then pointed his right hand at the location of the red base. These 4 guys have bad personalities. It seems that simple persuasion and threats will not work. I can only beat them up first. He opened his 5 fingers, and as his 5 fingers slowly opened, countless Red Alliance staff in the base were pulled by invisible forces, and all of them were picked out of the base like ants in just a dozen seconds. Then Li Anping gently pressed a finger towards the Red Alliance headquarters where only Yefeng and 4 others were left. As Li Anping pressed his finger, a fingerprint as small as a cruise ship suddenly appeared on the ground more than 800 meters away. All the steel and concrete were crushed by Li Anping's finger in the air, and a huge hole appeared in front of Ye Feng and the other four. It looked like a child had opened an ant nest. Whoever dares to attack the Red Alliance headquarters is looking for death. The first to attack was Qi Ning. He had the Holy Warrior in the game, and he could use the Holy Warrior's possession to exert all the abilities of the Holy Warrior. He roared wildly, jumped up, and punched Li Anping in the sky. Heaven and Earth Overlord Fist. The milky white dough Qi gathered on Qi Ning's fist, emitting bursts of light like a small sundae with Qi Ning's shout. The dough Qi ball, which had grown to the size of a door, flew out of his hand and shot towards Li Anping in the sky like a missile. Oh no, I used all my strength in this punch, and there is no one left alive. Just as Qi Ning thought of this, a white airflow suddenly condensed in the sky, and the next moment Qi Ning knew that he was wrong, very wrong. Facing Qi Ning's Heaven and Earth Overlord fist, Li Anping didn't even look at it, and let the dough Qi ball hit him behind him, like a breeze, without leaving any scars. And Li Anping looked at the four people under his feet, and slapped out again. In the midst of the atmospheric explosion, the power had already used the white air as a medium, turning into a huge white palm, like the five-finger mountain, slapping down hard towards the base of the Red Alliance. Before the giant palm arrived, the violent air that was oppressing Qi Ning, who jumped into the air, was already pressing down hard. He opened his mouth, but found that the strong wind was pouring back, making him unable to make any sound. This is the secret martial arts that Li Anping wields completely through the power of the body, manipulating the atmosphere with power and gathering it into shape, the Sumi palm. For him now, it can only be regarded as a means of greeting at most, but the power contained in it is no different from the collision of a million-ton mountain. Accompanied by the sound of the explosion caused by the friction of the atmosphere, the Sumi palm smashed towards the base of the Red Alliance with the power of thunder, tsunami, and storm, as if to completely wipe out the base under his feet from the ground. Under this palm, if there are other people in the base, even if they hide 10 kilometers underground, they will be shaken to death. Seeing that the white giant palm has come in front of him, the milky white fighting spirit suddenly burst out from Qi Ning's body, forming a gust of wind around him, shaking off the pressure of the atmosphere. Then with a roar, Qi Ning had already punched out with both fists, hitting the giant palm that fell from the sky. But the moment Qi Ning's fists just touched the giant palm formed by the air, he immediately regretted it. He deeply felt what it meant to shake a tree with an ant, what it meant to stop a chariot with a mantis arm, and what it meant to overestimate one's own strength. It was just like a Taishan falling from the sky. Qi Ning's attack couldn't even delay the Sumi palm for a second. He felt a sharp pain in both hands, and the whole person spit out a mouthful of blood with a wow, and then he was slapped to the ground like a human-shaped fly. The Sumi palm in the sky did not delay at all, and continued to smash towards the base of the Red Alliance. To be continued, please search Ocean Literature. The novel is better and updated faster. Man at the Top of the Food Chain. Author, Xianglang Guo. Chapter 457. Facing the five-finger mountain falling from the sky, the remaining three people did not panic. Yang Dali had put on a set of red armor without knowing when, and he leaped and caught the falling Qi Ning in his arms. On the other side, the immortal King Ye Feng looked at the huge palm falling from the sky, snorted coldly, and then pinched a sword gesture with both palms, and a stream of spiritual power had already sprayed out from the golden elixir in his body. Great and mighty Tianlong, the world-honored Kesidagarba, I am so humble. A line of fire sprayed out from his sword finger and rushed into the sky. At first it was a line of fire, but in an instant it became a fire snake, and finally turned into a huge fire dragon, rushing towards the giant palm in the sky without hesitation. The fire dragon roared wildly, and collided with the palm with a bang. However, although the dragon body was almost the same size as a locomotive, facing the Sumuru palm used by Li Anping, it was like the Buddha reaching out and slapping a small earthworm to death. The fire dragon seemed to have a spirit, screaming repeatedly while being beaten back by the giant palm in the sky. Humph, Ye Feng sneered, and his sword finger changed again, push. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. The rolling heat wave rushed towards him, and another 8 fire dragons rushed out of Ye Feng's body and flew towards the giant palm in the sky. There were 9 fire dragons in total, each curled on the fingers, back of the palm, and palm of the Sumuru palm. The high temperature and fire almost dyed most of the sky of Beeping City red. The air around the white giant palm became distorted under the stimulation of high temperature. Although the 9 fire dragons had no way to block the power of the Sumuru palm, they used the method of heating the air with flames to dissolve the Sumuru palm bit by bit. But even so, the immortal King Ye Feng was already surprised enough. These 9 fire dragons were trained by him using the little fairy fire he treasured from the Chaos Pearl. Not to mention ordinary steel, even burning mountains and boiling seas is not a problem, but now facing the opponent's giant palm. 9 dragons came out together to barely block it. How could Ye Feng not be surprised? What a powerful guy, it seems that he has to use all his strength. While the immortal King Ye Feng was dissolving Li Anping's Sumi palm, Zhang Ao on the other side brought a series of long after images and screams, like a cannonball, rushing towards Li Anping in the sky at lightning speed. Zhang Ao was able to rush out at the moment when Ye Feng dissolved the Sumi palm. He was indeed experienced in combat, and what made him even more proud was the overwhelming power in his right fist at this moment. Power is my life. Fist to conquer the world. A punch was thrown, and a sonic boom sounded. This was a punch that exceeded the speed of sound, and it had rushed towards Li Anping's chest with Zhang Ao's incomparable confidence and faith. But Zhang Ao's punch was destined to be in vain, because his opponent's strength had far exceeded his imagination. It was an existence that he could not understand or contend with at all. Li Anping didn't even look at Zhang Ao, who was sprinting in the air. Just like that, there was no murderous intent, no background. He couldn't even feel anything, and there was no way to defend himself. Zhang Ao's body shook as if struck by lightning. He was covered in blood and flew backwards at a speed faster than the speed at which he rushed up. How is it possible? Zhang Ao felt that he was seriously injured, as if he was punched in the chest by an invisible force. In the short confrontation just now, his sternum was broken, and he gasped in pain almost every time he breathed. But he had just flown more than 500 meters in the sky, and his whole body was dragged in the opposite direction by a powerful force, and then stopped, just like a sports car at a speed of 200 yards on the highway. The huge force dislocation made him spit out blood again, and the whole person fell to the ground with a pale face. Seeing Qin Ning and Zhang Ao being knocked down by each other in an instant, the eyes of the immortal King Ye Feng were solemn, and with a sword gesture, 9 fire dragons rushed towards Li Anping in the sky. The sky and the earth are boundless, the universe borrows the law, he shouted. "Da Li, fight!" A purple light emerged from his eyebrows. It was a 3-inch long purple sword. The whole body of the sword was made of a purple crystal. As soon as it appeared, the temperature within a radius of 1 kilometer seemed to drop rapidly. A thick murderous aura also rushed into the sky with the appearance of the sword, poking a big hole in the clouds in the sky. As the sword pointed to Li Anping's position, the air was cut like cheese. Just by pointing the tip of the sword at Li Anping's body, you can see with the naked eye that the air between the two was cut by the blade, forming a vacuum corridor. This sword is called Sixian. It was the natal flying sword that Ye Feng, as an immortal, spent thousands of years, took countless natural treasures, and spent countless days and months to forge with the 5 flavors divine fire and the rare treasures of heaven and earth. Even in the entire 9 heavens immortal realm, it ranks among the top 20. Although Ye Feng, who is only in the Jindan stage, cannot exert 1% of the power of this immortal sword, it is already an invincible force for most people on this planet. The purple immortal sword made a whooshing sound, disappeared in an instant, and instantly appeared on Li Anping's forehead. At the same time, a blazing purple flame burned on his sword, piercing through Li Anping's forehead. On the other side, after hearing Ye Feng's order, Yang Dali opened countless holes in his red armor from head to toe, and the next moment hundreds of missiles were launched, targeting Li Anping in the sky. Seeing the purple flying sword that suddenly appeared in front of him, Li Anping also had a rare look of slight surprise in his eyes. He was not surprised by the power of the immortal thorn sword, but because this was the first time he had seen the flying sword attack method, and it was also the first time he had seen the power operation mode inside the flying sword. However, facing the sword that could pierce a battleship in an instant, Li Anping still didn't give any reaction, and just let the flying sword stab hard at his forehead. The tip of the sword burning with purple flames collided with Li Anping's smooth forehead. The collision of power caused invisible sound waves to spread in all directions. But neither the purple flame nor the tip of the immortal sword could harm an inch of Li Anping, not even the slightest damage to his skin. The next moment, the shock wave caused by the collision of the two forces was centered on the point where the sword tip and the forehead touched, and swept away in all directions. Wherever the shock wave passed, crackling explosions were heard in the air from time to time. It was like thunder in the sky, caused by extremely powerful force bursting the air. The shock wave not only exploded the air, but also completely destroyed the 9 fire dragons that Ye Feng had activated before, like a small missile launched by Yang Dali. All the missiles and fire dragons surrounded Li Anping's position. Before they could reach within 10 meters of the opponent, they were all smashed into sparks one after another by the impact of the shock wave. The final result was like a huge ring of fire surrounding Li Anping's body. The thorning immortal sword did not hurt the opponent. Instead, it was shocked by Li Anping's forehead. A slight crack appeared on the sword body. It was held in the palm of the opponent's hand. Feeling that the opponent was holding the thorning immortal sword, Ye Feng immediately controlling the thorn immortal sword releases countless sword energy, trying to break free from the opponent's control. But the thorn immortal sword was like a caught fish in Li Anping's hands, no matter how hard he struggled. It was difficult to shake the opponent's palm at all. Instead, Li Anping squeezed lightly with his right hand, and the thorn immortal sword whined spiritually, and a few more cracks appeared on the sword body. As Ye Feng's magic weapon, under the influence of his mind, a trace of blood immediately left the corner of his mouth, and then he spat out a large mouthful of blood with a pop. But his eyes were still staring at Li Anping in the sky, his eyes full of disbelief. It was unbelievable. This was the first time he saw someone bumping the flying sword with their forehead. In the end, it was the flying sword that was injured. What was even more ridiculous was that Li Anping held the flying sword with his right hand. He almost crushed Fijian to pieces. This is simply the most ridiculous thing Immortal King Ye Feng has ever seen. And this is not an ordinary flying sword, but a flying sword that ranks among the top 20 in the 9 heavens immortal realm. Not only is the sword extremely sharp, but after it transforms into a rainbow, it has enough power to kill ghosts and gods. The purple flame attached to it has the ability to penetrate and burn all restrictions and barriers. But Ye Feng knew very well that the sword he just struck didn't use any special power at all. He relied on the strength of his body to resist his own flying sword. Even when Ye Feng encountered the 9 heavens thunder tribulation in his previous life, the thorn immortal sword was not damaged, but now it was violently damaged by Immortal. How do you fight a monster like this? Ye Feng waved his hand to stop Yang Dali, who was about to move forward, and casually released 2 Ganlin curses to treat Zhang Ao and Qin Ning, who were still lying on the ground groaning, and then looked at the people slowly falling from the sky. Li Anping said with an expression uglier than crying, "Who are you, sir? Do you have anything to do with me, the Red Alliance? I am the alien mentioned in the message from the League of Legends to you. You can call me Li Anping." Li Anping casually let go of the stinging immortal sword in his hand, and saw this famous flying sword in the 9 heavens immortal world. At this time, it looked like a lost dog. Just like that, he ran away quickly and got into the Niwen Palace between Ye Feng's eyebrows. The purple shadow was trembling, and the four people present could feel that the flying sword seemed to be afraid. Li Anping continued, I have nothing to do with your Red Alliance. It's just that I want to integrate all the human forces on the earth to help me find traces of the devil. The same is true for your Red Alliance. Yang Dali on the side said boldly, then there's no need to start fighting as soon as we come up, right? Li Anping looked at Yang Dali, and countless twisted electromagnetic fields were born around the opponent's red armor. The next moment, countless electromagnetic forces acted on Yang Dali's armor, and his armor was broken down into the smallest parts in an instant. It fell to the ground. Yang Dali looked at the armor on the ground and looked at Li Anping as if he had seen a ghost. Without the power to protect himself and facing the alien in front of him with a mortal body, Yang Dali was filled with insecurity. He did not dare to say anything more and just looked at Li Anping in fear. Considering the past experiences of your Red Alliance and the personalities of the four of you, it would be better to have a good fight first and then discuss the issue. Ye Feng smiled bitterly and said nothing. But he knew what the other party said was right. In the Red Alliance, especially Zhang Ao, Yang Dali, and Qi Ning, each of them has become famous at a young age and is the pride of heaven. They have become accustomed to arrogance and arrogance. They have always listened to whoever has the biggest fist. In their previous experience, they have always he is the one with the big fist. However, after such a greeting, the four people looked at Li Anping with shock and fear. In their eyes, Li Anping had simply become a monster among monsters. But they didn't know that the power Li Anping showed just now was not even 1/10,000th of his full strength. Glancing at the four people, Li Anping said, then the Red Alliance will also agree to follow my command, no problem. Looking at the broken walls and ruins around, and then looking at Zhang Ao and Qi Ning on the ground, and the immortal sword that was caught in Li Anping's hand and couldn't move, how else could Ye Feng answer? Understood, we will all follow your orders from now on. To be continued, please search Ocean Literature, the novels are better and updated faster, Man at the Top of the Food Chain author, Xionglang Go. Chapter 458. After hearing Ye Feng's words, Zhang Ao and Qi Ning, who were lying on the ground, suddenly became angry and their faces flushed. They felt that they had never been humiliated like this in their lives. They wanted to rush up and tear Li Anping apart immediately, but they knew they couldn't do it because Li Anping's strength was too strong and too terrifying. Qi Ning thought for a moment, and finally a trace of dejection flashed across his face. Even Ye Feng had given in, so what else could he do? Wait a minute, I have something to say. Zhang Ao on the other side stood up little by little, looking at Li Anping with red eyes. Li Anping, you insulted my dignity today, I can't do anything, just because you are so much stronger than me. Do you dare to make a bet with me? We will compete again in 10 years, and then we will leave life and death to fate. Li Anping looked at him, as if he could instantly see through his past, future, and inner world, and said lightly, you can't surpass me. 10 years, 100 years, or 10,000 years will make no difference. But as soon as the two words came out, a white light suddenly appeared on Li Anping's fingertips, and the next moment, with lightning speed, before the four people present could react, they rushed into Zhang Ao's body. Zhang Ao looked at his body and angrily said, Li Anping, what did you do to me? Are you afraid of my potential and want to kill me? Li Anping shook his head, aren't you going to make a bet? There's no need to go through the trouble of a duel. I'm probably 300 trillion times stronger than you now. The light just now will explode in 10 years. If you want to resist it, you don't need 300 trillion times. You just need to be 100 million times stronger than you are now. The three words 100 million times were like three huge rocks, pressing down on Zhang Ao's heart, making his face turn pale and blue. In the end, he shook his head in disbelief. Impossible, you lied to me, how could there be such a big difference between us? Ye Feng stepped forward and patted his shoulder to stop him from continuing. He said to Li Enping, "I wonder what we need to do next. The Red Alliance has 4 large bases. I want you to take all the remaining humans in the Red Country to these 4 large bases within a week." Ye Feng frowned when he heard this, but still said, "It can be done, but such a large territory may not be able to complete these things in such a short time." Li Enping opened one hand, and the next moment, countless storms in the sky were disturbed. Various particles in the air were changed in structure and transformed into various particles that Li Enping wanted. Not only was the air being transformed, but Li Enping's body, boundless energy emerged, and these energies were directly converted into various substances. It was a means of mass energy conversion and void creation. Iron, carbon, copper, gold, silver, various elements are constantly combined with each other and combined according to the pattern in Li Enping's mind. A huge aircraft carrier slowly appeared in front of the 4 people. "There are 32 strongholds in the world. I will build 12 floating aircraft carriers for each stronghold, 6 of which are used to guard the strongholds and 6 are used to rescue disaster victims around the world. The floating aircraft carrier here will be completed tomorrow. It has auxiliary artificial intelligence. You just need to select a team of soldiers to operate it. I will provide the location of all your refugees through artificial intelligence." Looking at the floating aircraft carrier gradually appearing in the sky, Ye Feng's face became more and more ugly. On the one hand, it was because of Li Enping's Midas touch and the means of creating things in the void. This means was not available when he was an immortal in his previous life. Li Enping's strength is stronger than he imagined. On the other hand, the existence of 12 floating aircraft carriers means that Li Enping is always monitoring all the strongholds. There are about 1 billion people left in the world now. If all of them are transferred to large strongholds, each stronghold will have to carry a population of 30 million people. This will be a huge pressure, and it is equivalent to bringing all humans under Li Enping's surveillance and control. But Li Enping didn't care whether his face was ugly or not, and continued, "As for food and supplies, I will make them once a month and provide them to all bases. You don't have to worry about this." How could Ye Feng not worry? Food and supplies are the most important things in the end times. Li Enping's doing this is equivalent to pinching their weakness. Ye Feng had to doubt again whether his real purpose was to find the devil. After finishing the next arrangement, Li Enping's figure flashed, and then turned into a white light and disappeared in the sky. Only his voice was still heard by the 4 people. "If there is anything, I will contact you." The 4 people looked at the floating aircraft carrier that was still being automatically assembled in the sky, and their faces were extremely ugly. Especially Zhang Ao, who was going to bet with Li Enping earlier, looked at the increasingly large aircraft carrier in the sky at this moment, and his face was so gloomy that water could almost drip out. Thinking of what Li Enping had just said to him, he had a strong feeling of being trapped in his own cocoon. Watching Li Enping constantly walking in the major cities on Earth, He said with some boredom, "Li Enping, although your strength has improved so much, your thoughts are still so boring. If you want to catch that level 8 evil god warrior, just smash this planet directly. Why bother so much? Even if you don't want to smash this planet, just follow your method just now and build more machines. The efficiency of robots is much higher than those humans." Li Enping said coldly, "Human beings are complex creatures, and too many machines will arouse their resistance and make them reject the next task of collecting disaster victims. Besides, the key to finding Rexnos has nothing to do with the number of machines. I have already scanned all the humans and their body structures on this planet, but nothing happened. That guy's previous reincarnations were all human, but he used his own power to lure me there. This time he hid his power and changed his body structure to be exactly the same as a human being." Li Enping he frowned. "The only way to identify him now is to start with memory scanning." What Li Enping did not say was that memory scanning was a means of accelerating his deification. 1 or 2 would be fine, but a similar global memory scan would likely blur his understanding of himself and even cause confusion in his memory. I am afraid it will greatly accelerate the process of his deification. He didn't know that Li Anping was so powerful that he could scan the memories of everyone on a planet in one breath. He just sneered and said, "Then what are you going to do next? Let those humans listen to your instructions and transfer all the people to the planet, find them all and gather them at 32 strongholds. This is just the first step. Since he wants to play, I will play with him," Li Anping said calmly. "There are still 1,040,000,000 people on the entire planet, and I will find him among these people." "Oh, aren't you worried that he is hiding and want to call for support? If Hong comes, you won't be able to get away with it. If he can find the world crossing gate, he can naturally contact his tribe." Li Anping looked at the sky. The world crossing gate he moved away has long been out of the orbit of the Earth, and is about 200 meters away from where he is now. Thousands of kilometers. But as long as he can't find the world crossing gate and doesn't have the ability to cross multiple universes, he won't be able to contact the life in another universe. Now he is just a turtle in the jar. "Oh, it seems that you hid the boundary gate very well." Halfway through, He had already reacted and sneered a few times and said, "You kid, are you testing me again?" Li Anping just said that he does not have the ability to span multiple universes. Naturally, this means that the evil god clan warriors cannot contact the king of the Red River. But conversely, it also means that the evil god clan itself, including the king of the Red River, cannot contact Lake North. And Kong Hei's answer is equivalent to acquiescing to this, which illustrates a problem, that is, the king of the Red River has indeed not broken through the way barrier among the 3 levels of the 9th energy level. Hei seduced again. "Li Anping, you want to know what Hong's ability is? Just ask me directly. Why bother to test around the bush? There are many deals we can do, not only Hong, but also the other demon gods. I can tell you. How about it? Send me all the humans on this planet, and I can tell you one of Hong's abilities." "I won't do this kind of thing." The corners of Li Anping's mouth suddenly raised slightly, "and this planet is not as ordinary as you think." To be continued, please search Ocean Literature. The novel is better and updated faster. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Man at the top of the food chain. Author, Xionglang Go. Chapter 459. In the following time, a total of 32 strongholds around the world were monitored and guarded by floating aircraft carriers. Under the unified command of Li Anping, governments from various places drove the remaining floating aircraft carriers to remove the remaining refugees still living in the wild. They were saved one by one. With Li Anping's ability to scan most of the planet, the government saves the effort of large-scale searches and only needs to fly the floating aircraft carrier to the designated location and pick up the refugees. But in the process, all kinds of problems in the apocalypse were exposed, and countless criminals were directly sentenced to death. Early in the morning, in the southwest region of the original Red Country. In an original police station, 5 men in ragged clothes were staring at a pot of soup, with a faint green light in their eyes. They have been trapped here for more than 3 months. All food, medicines, and other supplies have been consumed, and their lives have come to an end. One of them, a big man with a beard and a bird's nest head, said, "Who is going today?" He looked at the thinnest man among the 5 people, with a turbid light in his eyes. The thin man said harshly, "Look at what I'm doing, I've already been there yesterday." He turned his head towards a tall and thin man with a sallow face and said, "Zhao Qian, it's your turn today. If you don't go, don't have dinner." The tall and thin man named Zhao Qian shook his head in panic. "No. Don't let me go. There are monsters outside. If you go out casually, you will die." "Someone has to get out," the bearded man said. "Are we just sitting here waiting to die?" Brother June, the yellow-faced Zhao Qian, glanced furtively at a window of the police station and said softly, "If it really doesn't work, the worst possible outcome." Brother June interrupted what Zhao Qian was saying, "Okay, stop talking." Although Zhao Qian's words were interrupted by Brother June, the five men obviously knew what Zhao Qian wanted to say. From time to time they looked at the window that Zhao Qian was looking at just now, and the green light in their eyes became stronger. The thinnest man stood up, whispered, "Go to the bathroom," and left the fire. Brother June has no doubt that he is there. He hummed casually, "Go quickly, I won't share your soup if it's late." He stood up, picked up the spoon in the pot, and began to share the soup with the other people present. In the thick soup, there were a few vegetable leaves and half a mouse head that had been cooked for who knows how long. Even if it was in this way, it was the last food that the five people could eat. Seeing Brother June starting to divide the soup and rat meat in the pot, the eyes of the other three men started to glow green. "Brother June, please give me more. I just went out to find food yesterday." "What a fool you are. You didn't even walk 100 meters before you were scared back. If I hadn't caught a mouse last week, we would all be hungry today. Where's Li Tang? Why haven't you come yet? If he doesn't come, we'll give him his share." Just as a few people were talking, a harsh girl's scream suddenly rang out. Brother June was the first to put down the pot and ran towards the place where the scream came from without saying a word. Brother June pushed the door open and found that it was locked from the inside. So without saying a word, he kicked hard with his right foot, and with a bang, the locked door was completely kicked open. In the room, two skinny girls were hiding in the corner and shivering. Where they looked, the thin man pressed a girl onto the bed and strangled the girl's neck with both hands. The girl's body kept twisting and her legs kicked wildly. However, due to long-term malnutrition, lack of food and exercise, her strength was pitiful. Two firewood-like arms grasped the thin man's hand, but they were like earthworms shaking a tree, unable to stop the man from committing violence. The thin man's eyes were green, and he stared at the girl in his hand. His eyes looked as scary as a hungry wolf in the grassland. "Are you crazy?" Brother June yelled angrily, rushed forward, and kicked away the thin and violent man. He lifted up the girl whose eyes had turned white and asked, "Are you okay?" The thin man over there stood up and shouted crazily, "I'm crazy, you're the one who's crazy. Now that the whole world is in ruins, how can you pretend to be a good person? We can't survive without eating them. Look at the one-eyed dragon, all their women and children have been eaten. If we don't eat, we will be robbed by them too. Not only do we not eat them, we also feed them one meal a day. This will kill us." With a crisp sound, Brother June slapped the thin man to the ground and said angrily, "I don't care what others do, but it won't work here anyway." The thin man was quite tough. After being slapped, he stood up without saying a word and silently walked out the door. At this time, the other three men were already standing outside the door. The thin man pushed them away and walked out without saying a word during the whole process. Brother June sighed, "He's too hungry. It's okay. Let's go. Let's go." That night, everyone gathered together again to drink the rat soup that no longer tasted like meat. During the dinner, except for a few other people, the remaining four men's green eyes glanced at the room where the three women were from time to time. Brother June sighed in his heart, knowing that what the thin man did today had aroused the desire in the hearts of the other people. Even he would have similar thoughts when he felt the hunger stirring in his stomach from time to time, let alone them. When will this world end? Just when Jun Ji was thinking about these things, a vague feeling suddenly passed through his heart. Not good. Just when he felt bad, the drowsiness surged from his whole body like a tsunami. In the end, Jun Ji could only see the other four men's terrible eyes mixed with hunger, cruelty, and bloodthirstiness, and then he fainted. I don't know if it was a few minutes or a few hours. In a daze, Jun Ji only heard the man's excited smile and the woman's shrill scream. He finally woke up and exerted a little force, but found that his hands and feet were all tied up. A hand pressed on his shoulder. Junji turned his head and looked. The man swallowed and said to him, "Junji, don't move." Junji turned his head and looked around, and found that in addition to himself being tied up, a man was looking at him. Another man was boiling water, and Zhao Qian on the other side was sharpening a knife. From time to time, they looked at him a few times, and the malice in their eyes was no longer concealed. From the direction of the room where the three girls were, there were a few weak screams and the roar of the violent man from time to time. Jun's heart sank little by little. How long has he been in there? Zhao Qian, who was standing by, glanced at Jun and said, "He just went in, less than half a minute. We gave you a little bit of anesthetic, and you only slept for 5 minutes. Don't worry, Li Tang won't kill them." He seemed to feel a little sorry for Jun while sharpening the knife. He explained, "Jun, if you hadn't led us all the way out, we would have died in the mouths of those monsters. We will remember your kindness for the rest of our lives. We wanted to eat those 3 women with you, but you refused to do so, and we had no choice." As he spoke, tears fell from the corners of the man's eyes, and he looked at the sharp kitchen knife in his hand with empty eyes. "We are really hungry, and want to eat. If we don't eat, we will die." Jun Zhaoqian turned his head and looked at Jun, who was tied to the ground. The madness and bloodthirstiness in his eyes made everyone frown. "Although you saved us, you can't let us die with you. Whoever doesn't let me live, I will let him die." After shouting these words crazily, he walked over slowly. The kitchen knife in his hand slowly pointed at Jun's neck. The other 2 men also came up, holding Jun's body tightly on the left and right. "Jun, don't worry, you won't feel anything after 1 knife. I won't let you feel any pain." Jun closed his eyes, and his heart was completely hopeless. He thought that it would be better to die like this, in the current world. But there is no point in living. His body of meat is enough for them to eat for a week or 2. At this moment, a huge roar came into everyone's ears, and Jun felt a chill on his forehead, as if something was spilled on his forehead. He couldn't help but open his eyes, and saw Zhao Qian, who was holding the kitchen knife high, looking at him stupidly, with a huge blood hole on his forehead, constantly flowing out white and red liquid. Plop, 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 3 times in a row. In addition to Zhao Qian, the other 2 men also fell down, and the red blood turned into a pool of blood in an instant. Jun looked up, his face had turned into a look of surprise. A huge floating aircraft carrier was floating above their heads, and the huge shadow covered all the surrounding streets. More than a dozen soldiers rushed in from the gate of the police station, and they were the ones who fired the gun just now. One of the soldiers escaped with a dagger, cut the rope that tied Jun, patted him on the shoulder and said, "We know about your affairs, good job, you are a man. It's all over now, we are here to take you back." Hearing this, Jun, who has always been like a tough guy on the screen, and didn't shed a tear even before being killed, finally couldn't help but shed tears in the corners of his eyes. The nightmare is finally over. At this moment, a thin man who had just taken off his shirt and was only wearing a pair of ragged pants walked out of the door, looking stupidly at the floating aircraft carrier and soldiers in the sky, and shouted, "Ha ha ha ha! Saved! We are saved!" Bang! With a sound, the bullet passed through his forehead and opened his skull. The thin man fell to the ground stupidly, still with a stunned expression on his face. Junji seemed to remember something, and grabbed the soldier beside him and said, "South, in the supermarket 2 kilometers south, there are still, and..." The soldier patted his shoulder and said, "Don't worry, you are the last batch in the world. We have killed those beasts in the supermarket." Thinking about what he saw in the south, the soldier couldn't help but flash a trace of anger and helplessness in his eyes. The demon's attack has really led to too many tragedies. The rescue team has seen all kinds of human tragedies. A small base like Junji and his is already very lucky. There are many other bases, and now there are only a group of lunatics and murderers left. There was no other result except being shot on the spot. When Junji boarded the floating aircraft carrier, he found that the hull on the aircraft carrier, which seemed to be a place where some weapons were placed, was already filled with hundreds of refugees. Most of them looked listless and skinny, but holding the steamed buns given by the soldiers in their hands, their eyes were full of joy of surviving the disaster. Junji looked at the three little girls who followed him closely. According to the military doctor, although Junji's care had prevented them from being harmed, the long-term desperate situation of hunger and cold still caused them too much stimulation, and they had already regarded Junji as their closest person. At this moment, the screen in the hall suddenly flashed, and a man in white appeared on the screen. All the people in the hall, whether soldiers or refugees, were attracted by the image on the screen, looking at the man in white, and said lightly, "Just 1 minute ago, all the surviving humans have been rescued. Then, according to the previous plan, we can also start drawing numbers." The next moment, behind the man in white, a huge turntable began to rotate. I don't know if it was an illusion, Junji always felt that the soldiers around him were all looking at the turntable on the screen very nervously, with anger and fear in their eyes, as if something very bad was going to happen. To be continued, please search Ocean Literature. The novel is better and updated faster. Man at the Top of the Food Chain. Author, Seong Go. Chapter 460. Japan, Tokyo. As a country without armed forces, Japan was hit hard by the demon frenzy. If the Japanese warriors had not united to fight the demons, the whole of Japan would have become a food paradise for the demons, and now Japan has long been a scorched earth without people. However, even though the warriors tried their best to protect Japan, they only established a large base in Tokyo, which is one of the 32 large bases owned by humans in the world today. Currently, more than 25 million Japanese are stationed there. And just yesterday, the big turntable that Li Anping was spinning stopped at the number represented by Tokyo. After repeatedly promoting his own military power and the ownership of the floating aircraft carrier in the sky, everyone already knew the power represented by Li Anping. Now, the whole of Tokyo has fallen into chaos, with fires, car accidents, and robberies emerging one after another, and everyone seems to be caught in some kind of doomsday carnival. On all the major traffic arteries and the entrances and exits of Tokyo, there are dense steel defenses. Anyone who approaches, whether ordinary citizens or the military, will be covered by violent rain of bullets. At this moment, when the end of the world is coming again, on the roof of the 54th floor of the Midtown Tower, the tallest building in Tokyo, Li Anping, dressed in white, is standing quietly on the edge of the roof, looking at the chaotic Tokyo city with a cold face. And the source of all this chaos is just because of his few words. At this moment, an armed helicopter quickly flew towards Li Anping. After seeing Li Anping, he fired 16 rockets in succession without saying a word. 16 rockets rushed towards Li Anping's position like 16 brilliant fireworks. But these rockets are nothing more than fireworks to Li Anping. Watching the 16 rockets fly into the air, they were directly decomposed into a ball of powder that was difficult to distinguish with the naked eye. Disappeared. The helicopter pilot roared, pressing the rocket button frantically, aiming all the remaining rockets at Li Anping, and driving the helicopter directly towards Li Anping on the roof. He clearly wanted to die together. But the result was no different from the previous 16 rockets, which were also decomposed into countless basic atoms. This was the 14th wave of people who came to this building to attack Li Anping today. While thinking about this, an armor-piercing bullet fired by a sniper rifle appeared in front of Li Anping's forehead. In the rapidly flowing time, Li Anping could still slowly raise his right hand and grab the bullet in his palm. Then he looked at the building in the distance. In a room on a certain floor of the building, the sniper saw that Li Anping was unharmed in the scope, so he immediately threw away the sniper rifle and wanted to leave immediately. But as soon as he raised his foot, his feet were empty. It turned out that the entire floor had turned into countless fragments. It was not just a simple floor, but the entire building collapsed directly under Li Anping's sight. At this time, there was still 1 hour and 52 minutes left before the time agreed by Li Anping. 5 minutes later, a man in black clothes and black hair walked onto the rooftop. He held a silver-white pistol in his hand and pointed at Li Anping and said, "Hey, do you think you are the great demon King Piccolo?" Li Anping did not move his body or turn his head. Because he did not need these movements, he could already see everything happening behind him. "Are you the so-called brave man of this country? I saved all human beings, and now I kill some of them. What's wrong with that? How many people you killed and how many people you saved are none of my business. But destroying Tokyo has touched my reverse scale, and this alone is the reason for your disappearance." After saying this, the man pulled the trigger, and the energy comparable to 22 million tons of explosives exploded instantly. But after a flash of white light, the imagined explosion did not happen. The terrifying energy had been pinched in Li Anping's hand and turned into a small white bead. Li Anping said, "Skip the annihilation reaction directly. Good means of mass energy conversion. You should be the strongest in this country. No other means." Looking at the other party's stunned look, Li Anping said, "Then you can go to hell." Before he finished speaking, the other party's body was decomposed in an instant. In this way, half an hour later, ordinary citizens and brave men came to attack Li Anping, but the result was naturally no different. In the last minute, the whole city had fallen into the final madness, and Li Anping began to fulfill his promise. I saw a white light gradually lit up on his fingertips. The next moment, the light expanded to the entire Tokyo, like an inverted bowl and dish, holding up the entire Tokyo city. Within the range covered by the light, everything was melted by tens of thousands of degrees of high temperature. Humans, animals, vehicles, buildings, and all things that represent traces of human existence were all wiped out in an instant. It looks like a place was wiped out from the map. The range of the white light was also controlled just right, with the entire Tokyo base as the boundary. Any location outside this range, even 1 centimeter away, was unscathed, and any location within the Tokyo base was completely turned into scorched earth. 25 million people died in an instant, and the world's most prosperous city became a wasteland. In the world, countless people watched the huge fireball on the TV screen and fell into a frenzy. On the armored plate of a floating aircraft carrier floating in the Pacific Ocean, Li Anping was looking at the endless ocean with a calm face, and I don't know what he was thinking. This is the temporary palace built by Li Anping, and it was also built to prevent the imbalance between the various forces in the world. Otherwise, if he stayed at the headquarters of a force, that force would naturally become the target of public criticism. With the sea level below this floating aircraft carrier as the center, there are a total of 2 fleets following Li Anping's floating aircraft carrier in the area of 50 to 100 kilometers around. It is to prevent Li Anping from hurting others and to prevent others from offending Li Anping. Since Li Anping announced that he would draw a lot every 2 days, and the stronghold drawn would be destroyed by him personally the next day, the whole world has been boiling. This naked terrorist act made all the Earthlings who had just been rescued hate Li Anping. They also regarded Li Anping as a complete devil. After Li Anping broadcasted the entire process of Tokyo's destruction, the situation became even more violent and intense. There were protesting crowds and crazy demonstrators everywhere. On the day of Tokyo's destruction, Li Anping became the biggest nightmare of all mankind. The League of Heroes and the Red Alliance, representing the strongest power of mankind, came together to dissuade Li Anping, but they were unsuccessful. They could only try to stop the crazy crowd from attacking Li Anping and prevent the situation from getting worse. And many of their actions to please Li Anping were also regarded by many as acts of raping and running dogs. Seeing Li Anping standing motionless on the armor plate of the floating aircraft carrier, He said with some boredom, "If you want to kill him, just kill him. Don't you think it's troublesome to create such a real dream? Scan the material data of the entire Earth, and then copy it in the dream. It's really amazing that you can think of it. In terms of time and resources, dreams are more efficient," Li Anping said slowly. "In dreams, I can make 3 months pass in 4 or 5 hours, which greatly shortens the time I spend looking for Riknos. This will give me more time to prepare for future actions. And compared to the real destruction of 32 strongholds, I only need to continuously release simulated brainwaves of a specific frequency through all the floating aircraft carriers to maintain this dream. There will always be accidents. Of course there will be accidents," Li Anping did not continue to explain. In fact, his body in the real world is running at the speed of light almost every minute and every second to deal with various unexpected situations. For example, accidental deaths caused by everyone sleeping, such as fires, floods, and gas explosions. Some people woke up unexpectedly, and some people realized that they were in a dream. Li Anping in the real world is processing everything at the speed of light. Since Riknos has changed his body structure to be exactly like a human, he will definitely be pulled into this dream by me. His ability will be reincarnated after death. Once he is in an attack city, he will think he is dead and activate his reincarnation ability. And I only need to scan the physiological conditions of everyone in every attack city in reality, and I can find him the moment he activates his ability. What Li Anping didn't say is that all this will be done without scanning the memory of all mankind. This is equivalent to pulling all mankind into a virtual online game, but there is no upgrade or monster hunting in this online game, and everyone can only continue to suffer various bullying from Li Anping. To be continued, please search Ocean Literature. The novel is better and updated faster.